Hey guys, we're the Hard Time Shaman podcast, trading up a better class of man, and I have one question for you. What should you, the average gray squirrel, and the IRA all have in common? You should be able to hide your nuts. Today we're talking about caches and caching out of the Special Forces Operational Techniques FM, out of our own twisted minds. Today we're talking about how and where to hide your stuff. Because maybe you'll have to. I mean, for a rainy day. Why did Granddad bury, that Alice pack with a broken down AK in the backyard? You never know. You never know.
Rainy day.
A rainy day. Exactly. So today we're going over the ins and outs of caching from TC31-29, except for not in Army speak, because I don't know who publishes these things or who did publish it, but they were terrible. And it took me
Oh
a
my
week
gosh.
in order to go through this and to make any real sense of it. So it will be in traditional Hard Time Shaman fashion. If you want all the nitty gritty, we'll leave all of our references in the description, all our references in our show notes that we'll post up to our Patreon. But buckle up, enjoy the ride. I was gonna say, normally this is the part where you talk. I really can't give a better segue than that.
No, that was a good intro. That was a good intro. I just don't know how to follow that up. That was impressive. I'm not gonna lie.
Thank you. I was channeling my inner Rogan there.
That was great. I like it. No, I like it. Oh,
So why hide your nuts?
yeah.
What do you
I
need
was
to
about to
think
say
about?
that. Like, yeah. When we're talking, why would you really need to hide something? Uh, so my mind, from an operational standpoint, goes to I mean, you're doing a long recon. You're carrying a backpack on your back, or you're carrying your rucksack on your back. It's heavy. You need to get into an area where speed and maneuverability is going to be key. And you're going to be able to go in there, do what you need to do, and then exfil. You need to have your ruck somewhere nearby, but you don't need all the stuff that's in it. So this is where caching comes into play, at least from that standpoint. From
I mean,
the
there's all sorts
civilian
of reasons,
side,
right? There's all sorts of
yeah, there's
reasons,
a
right?
lot.
So, like you said, you can't carry everything on your person. You can't throw everything in a vehicle. You can't keep everything at home,
It's a
right?
lot.
So, yeah. So if you're working towards, just general preparedness, you're going to have to keep things in, off your person, outside of your immediate area, and basically all caching is hiding that equipment, hiding that material, all that stuff in a safe place, so that you can use it later. I mean, so pop culture, right? So John Wick, okay, first movie,
Oh yeah,
he hid a crap ton of gold coins, his gold ticket, and back into his old ways. He hid a gun, all sorts of different stuff underneath a cement slab in his basement. John Wick 2, he hid various weapons along his projected route through the tunnels. Okay, what else? I mean, think of any movie, any book. So Jason Bourne in, what was it, the Bourne Identity, had a bunch of
oh
different
yes,
passports, IDs, money, a handgun in a safety deposit box that he might have to use later. And
right. And
it,
in actually recent history, I would say within the last 50 or so years, y- we mentioned it before in the intro, the IRA. The IRA are notorious for having buried supplies and caches of weapons, money. I've heard rumors of drugs, like in
so perfect example in
underground.
yeah, so in, what was it, in Fry the Brain, one of the case studies that the author goes over is a IRA attack on a convoy. Okay, but what the IRA did was, I don't know if they buried it or they just hid it, but a cache of weapons in a barn that had already been swept through,
Mhm.
by the occupying force, right? Swept through initially. They went after the security sweep went through, dug all that crap up, and used it in the barn that they already searched.
Ooh.
I mean, and to
Ooh.
devastating effect. So imagine an attack coming when you think you're secure. When you're like, oh no, I checked that, we're good. Why? Yeah, I mean, huge effect. So like think about any time that you hide a spare key on your car. I mean, just the we overthink this stuff, but it's so simple. People have been doing it for ages, right? It's a rainy day, so
Yep.
you put stuff away, and there's always that measure of risk that it'll be discovered or destroyed or whatever. But we do it anyways. It's such a simple concept.
Right. And just like the IRA with that barn, well, I mean, to expound on the IRA, the joke is that they have so many hidden caches in and around Ireland that they have forgotten where most of them are over the years.
What a
But
vibe!
I
I
know,
wish I
right?
had that many guns that I forgot where I put them. What a great problem to have.
Working on it. But anyway,
We'll get there.
much like the IRA, if you're going to hide a cache, you got to be smart about it. That's where site selection comes into play. And when you're doing this, you need to have a criteria in your mind of, you know, the ideal hiding spot for this stuff. Can the site be located by simple instructions that are just so dummy proof that someone who has
Unmistakably
never
clear.
visited this location, yeah,
Well,
completely
so you
unmistakably
can't
clear.
always, so you can't assume that you're going to be the one digging up your cache.
Right,
What if you have to pass that task off to somebody else, right?
right.
So you can't be like a national treasure, wild goose chase. It has to be, like you said, unmistakably clear. There has to, you have to have at least two ways to get there and two ways to leave. So having a primary and an alternate site, or a primary and
Right.
alternate route. And you have to think, can you in place this and can you recover it in all seasons, in all weathers? Because you don't get to choose when your rainy day is.
That's why we call it a rainy day, tongue in cheek.
Yeah. And then just some other things to think about when you're laying this cache, right? So you have to think about your potential enemy, or you know local population, randoms or friendlies. What are the people around your cache going to do, right?
Right.
So if you find an abandoned apartment complex, right, and you're like, oh, dude, that's the spot, and then it starts getting renovated,
Oh
that
God,
might be an issue, you know,
that's the
or
worst.
that same apartment complex, and then the enemy takes that up as a freaking CP. It's like, oh, well, I can't use that anymore, you know.
Or
So
or even worse, they demo the building.
yeah, yes, yes. I mean, so is the spot that's too popular? Is it a part of key terrain? Because that's going to be terrible, right? You have to think all these things through. But something that can help
It's
with
also,
that. So, oh, go for it.
I was gonna say, like, even along those lines, you think about it, if you're trying to bury something, say in the middle of a field, like, well, does that field get like actively plowed, planted? I mean,
Yeah,
wh- is it near like an area that's being developed? Because the field could very quickly become a parking lot.
yeah. Or you're like, oh man, I'm gonna put it in that grove of trees, and then that grove of trees doesn't exist anymore. I,
Yeah,
you know,
by natural
you're
disaster or
SOL,
man-made happening. Yep, you are
right?
screwed.
Yeah. But things that can help kind of mitigate that. So you need to do a good preliminary reconnaissance of the site that you're planning to use as your cache, right? So ideally, um, if you had a good enough resources, enough time beforehand, you'd want to do a map survey. So inside, you'd be looking at something like Caltopo. There's a shameless plug. So use Caltopo. You find your
Caltopo.
exact location you want to go
Mm,
through. You can go through the layers. You can go over heat maps. 100-year floodplain, topography. Everything.
I
And
love
you find
Caltopo.
just the
Caltopo's so awesome.
you can get lost on that site. It's freaking nuts. Um, and then obviously, you need eyes on the ground. So you're going into your personal recon. So if somebody actually going out, getting you know, feet in the dirt with measuring line, probing rods, whatever. Keep in mind that whoever is there needs to have a believable reason for being there, right? So if you are a local to the area and you suddenly take up, bird watching or sports or whatever, if that is that going to raise any eyebrows, you need to think that stuff through. Or if you're random in the area, hey, why the hell is that guy beating around, the old suburbia? Like, who is he? You have to think all this stuff through because you are inevitably going to be in or around people.
Personal recon is also really important because it gives you boots on the ground experience of, hey, these points that we went over earlier, did they apply? So is it going to be easy to find your landmarks to find this site again? Are there secure routes in and out of the site? Like, how hard is it going to be to find this place? How hard is it going to be? And this we're going to bring this up later. How hard is it going to be to retrieve this cache? And not only
Yeah.
that, can I get here during rainy season, during winter? Like, is are does this area get like burned down regularly by
Dude, what's your
forest fires?
what's your loom at night? Like, am I gonna be silhouetted if
Yeah.
I
Oh,
go
that's a good
over
one.
this? Or, where are my sight lines? All that stuff, dude.
Yeah.
Like, you absolutely need, an actual person on the ground.
Yep.
Absolutely essential. But like you said, going into actually finding the site. So you're going to be keep in mind reference points. So how your reference point could be how you relate to the general area. So it's like, all right, it's in this town, or it's after this intersection, or whatever,
Mhm.
down to the most the precise point or the final reference point that you'll be using. So it has to be easily identifiable. It needs to stay there. It needs to be remain fixed for as long as you're going to use the cache, right? So it can't be something that's transient that can move. And it has to be near enough to the site that you're actually using in order to pinpoint it using, measurements. So you can't just
Can't
eyeball it.
stress this.
Go 150 yards that way. Like that doesn't work.
I can't stress this enough. Your reference point has to remain fixed. It cannot just be a broken down car because that car can be repaired and moved. Can't just be a
Hmm.
tree because that tree could be cut down, dug up, burned down by a forest fire. It can't be a rock in the middle of a field because that rock could be crushed, it could be moved, it could be buried.
I have the perfect
Things
example.
change. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was gonna say I have the perfect example. So at my church we have like prayer trails, like meditation trails, right behind the church.
Mhm.
I have a lot of land that you can do little hikes through. Great little spot. One of our favorite spots, me and my boy, because we hike after church, to go to is an old bridge. It's broken down, so there's like half of it hanging over the creek, and the rest of it's gone. Right, so we'll go over there, then we'll go and hike in the creek and everything. Went to go there last Sunday after a lot of storms and heavy rainfall. The bridge isn't there anymore.
Oh, it got washed away.
No, it's still there, but you couldn't see it because it's completely underwater. Had like a good 12
Oh,
foot swell.
and that, my friends, is why I stress is it going to remain there during rainy season
Is it going to be there when you show up? Now imagine if we had a cache nestled, nice underneath that bridge.
on the
Gone,
bridge. Yeah.
unusable,
No,
right?
get your scuba gear.
So yeah,
You
I
better
mean,
hope it's
and just
waterproof.
and freak stuff, right? Just
Okay.
it's gone.
Yep.
So sorry,
Landslides,
that was my
tornadoes.
little
No,
personal tidbit
get it.
there.
So it's funny too, because like you mentioned that, and I can remember reading a book when I was a lot younger. It was something along the lines of like the Wild West in Texas, and people would get like attacked by bandits or Indians or uh some kind of natural disaster would happen, and they had valuables on them, so they would bury them and then take reference points, basically like trees or rocks, and they'd be like,
Yeah,
"Come back to this after I get some help." They come back, they can't find it.
yeah.
There's hundreds of stories about that stuff,
I will
and
imagine
it's a
like what's
prime
gone, what's
example,
been taken. Like who knows?
right? Who freaking knows?
or another story. So like when I was growing up, we grew up like right on the train tracks. So me and my sisters would walk up and down like miles down the train tracks when we were kids, and me and my cousin would take old railroad ties. We'd jiggle it out of the or the nails, and we jiggle it out of the ties, and then we would bury them in
Yeah.
the rocks. And I can still go there as an adult, walk down and see a little mound of rocks. I can throw the rocks away, and there'll be railroad nails in there. It's
Oh
completely
yeah.
untouched.
They're
It's
called
just
spikes.
spikes. Fight me. You know what I meant. But
Yes.
just saying, like it's just it's just kind of funny what will remain versus what won't. But that to say, um, railroad's pretty decent area, because if you can get a good final reference point to say, hey, at this railroad crossing at this tie, however many feet over, you know, so you have to use your head, think outside the box, use your imagination with a lot of this stuff, but it needs to be there. It needs to be
Yeah.
permanent, and
Yeah. It has to
you
be
need to
permanent.
be able to. It has to be unmistakable, because
Right. I
otherwise, like
mean,
you said, you'll have hundreds of stories of just like, oh crap, where'd it go?
yeah. Examples of like what we're talking about. We're talking about bridges. We're talking about dams. We're talking about like mile markers along the highway. We're talking about monuments. We're talking about telephone poles. We're talking about anything that in the infrastructure or man made, more than likely, still going to be there in about 40 years. That's what we're
And
talking
you're
about.
looking for stuff that isn't a high trafficked
Traffic area.
area. Yeah, you're
Yep.
looking for stuff that is kind of off the beaten path. So just like kind of forgotten ish type places.
Which is really
But
hard in today's society with as much as everything's developing and sprawling out.
yes. Yeah.
All right. Shall we get into the pinpointing techniques?
Yeah, we probably should.
I'm trying to remember what those were.
So basically the idea is that your immediate reference point, so like the hey, this is the general area, and your final reference point, like this is the last thing that you're going to get to before you get instructions
Yeah,
for
yeah, yeah.
where the cache is, should be the same, right? So the easiest method is to have the cache be directly beside that point, that final reference point.
Right,
So say, hey, it's the 26th rail tie on the right. If I go directly to the right of that rail tie, dig down a foot or two, it'll be there. So you just have to find that point. Like that's the simplest, most ideal way. And then
okay,
citing, right? So citing the cache by projection. So you have your final reference point, and then using like an azimuth or uh, a cardinal direction. You can say, hey, this direction for however long, keep it within like 10-15 meters, right? Keep it close, because you're going to have a lot of drift depending on how far you go.
right.
At this direction, this distance, that's where it's going to be. Or if you're using multiple reference points, so having them be at an intersection. So, hey, at this reference point, I'm headed north. At this reference point, that's like 15 meters away, I'm heading east. At that intersection is where it's going to be. So, not as precise. There's things you can do to make it more precise, like using azimuth or using reference points that are uh, like long, or what am I trying to say?
Yeah, so basically what you're trying to say is an example of this would be to use the side of a building,
Thank
or
you.
if it
Yes,
has a piece of
exactly.
wood that's straight, you just look down the edge of that piece of wood into the distance, and that's your line that you're gonna take.
Exactly.
Exactly right. And
Yes.
actually, I'm gonna nerd out here. Uh, one of my favorite games of all time was Assassin's Creed Black Flag, and
Oh,
in that
yeah.
game, there was I would call it a mini game where you had to find these little stones so you can get a piece of armor. And the mini game was you climbed up on top of this thing and you rotated this I guess projection that's on the ground. And what it did was it located two or more reference points on the ground and then shot lines from them, and at the intersection of those lines is where the stone was buried.
Oh, cool.
So,
That's cool.
popular culture reference.
Okay. Then moving on to recovery. So recovery, just general equipment that you're going to have for the recovery team. Uh, a probing rod. So something, you know, like a bit of metal or a
Mhm.
thin dowel, something that you can use for barrel sights to dig into the ground to feel where the actual cache is. Don't beat it into the ground with a freaking hammer. Don't make it a sharp
Yeah.
stick that you can damage the packaging. Um, but
Um,
just something that you don't have to dig
honestly,
up a bunch of earth as you're going along because that's going to leave a trace, obviously.
yeah. I would honestly recommend a piece of rebar, and the end of it, I would grind down into, like, a rounded edge. So,
Say or duct tape it or something. Yeah,
yeah, enough to where you can penetrate the ground, but not your cachet.
right. Exactly. Uh, Shovels, shears, grappling hooks if you're using submersion,
Yeah.
things of that nature. So,
Oh,
so think
oh,
also. So what?
I forgot to I just remembered this. I remember the last time we were going through caches, uh, 2 other methods of, location after you buried it, GPS
Right? Yeah, we talked about that.
and that little trick I talked about, driving a metal spike into the ground right above your cache so that you could locate it with a metal detector.
Yes. That could
So
even be
those are
like a
2
tent.
options as well.
That could even be like a tent stake. They just put a little bit of dirt over. Like, doesn't even have to be that big.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you can go to a hardware store and get, like, one of those big freaking bolts and
Right.
just shove it straight into the ground like that. That's gonna get picked up for sure by a metal detector. But who in their right mind is gonna be out in the woods with a metal detector looking for your cache? Nobody.
Rats get fat.
Yep. Rats get fat. Pinpoint that sucker with GPS and have your metal detector on you. Could be handheld too. Just saying.
Holy crap, dude. So, like, get a good map off Caltopo, find your 10-digit grid, and then encode that with a one-time pad. Bam.
Damn.
Try to find it. Anyway,
Yeah. Anyway,
it's
recovery. Back to recovery.
uh, other considerations, and we'll talk about it when we talk about burial sites. But I was gonna say, have something of the approximate size of your cache with you, so that you can bury that in its place, so there's not a depression when you rebury it.
Yeah.
And
So
then wherever your
probing
site
rod.
is, I was gonna say wherever your
But
site is, just sterilize after you're gone.
yeah, you don't want it. It shouldn't look like somebody's been there. It shouldn't look like somebody actually purposely moved this dirt and then tamped it down. Because if you're like stomping down the dirt, that does not look natural.
No.
It just doesn't. It needs to look like it's
Well, and
supposed to be there.
the why, right? So why are we sterilizing the site after there? Because people are going to ask questions, right?
Yes.
So if you are in contested environment, if you are in, you know, enemy environment, um, they're going to start asking questions, and they're not just going to talk amongst themselves. They're going to be round people up, like, "Hey, the hell's going on?" And that causes a lot of problems for you. So best not to have questions asked.
You're not
Which
wrong.
leads
Basically, don't draw attention
into
to it.
exactly, don't draw attention. Which leads into emplacement. So first and foremost, concealment. It's the quickest, easiest, down dirty way of getting or emplacing a cache. This looks like so many so many different things, right? There are so many ways that you can do this. This could be a camo tarp, over a rucksack that you shoved in a bush. This could look like just hiding something in a cave or behind drywall or fill in the blank.
Yeah, moving
Concealment, you are
foliage to
right.
toss over the top of it.
Right. Concealment, all you are doing is you are just obscuring the profile of what you're hiding.
Yep.
This is the least secure, right? So this can be happened upon easily. This could be destroyed. This could, be weathered or whatever. So this isn't a good long term solution. But if you're trying to decentralize and have a bunch of little caches, that's probably a good way to do it. Because it's cheap, it's fast, and you don't need that many people to do it. This could be a one man job potentially.
Right. And this is exactly what I was talking about earlier when I was saying when I was describing like the tactical environment. Say, hey, you're going in for recon, but you don't want your entire ruck. You would use this method when leaving your ruck
Right.
behind.
Right.
The next one would be burial. Burial is way more involved. Obviously, you're going to need some method of digging. So you need more equipment, you need more energy, you need time.
Manpower.
Ideally, uh, manpower. Ideally, you do this under cover of night.
Hmm.
But conditions are not always ideal. So if you're going to do a burial, make sure you're not seen doing it.
Well, and this has to do with your recon, right? So if you're trying to dig a burial site in Texas, it depends on where in Texas you are.
Oh, good
Because you could be
freaking
digging
luck.
through shale, you could be digging through clay, you could be digging through who the hell knows rock. I mean, like it's luck of the draw,
Yeah.
and it depends on it depends on so many factors. I mean, hell, dude, like so soil drainage. What kind of ground cover do you have? Does it have natural concealment? What are you digging? Vertically or horizontally, right? Because that's different
Mm,
stressors on the cache itself and what you're
yeah.
actually able to do. And depending on when you're digging, okay, are you in rainy season? Like we talked about with the bridge?
Oh,
Are you in winter? Because good luck trying to
yeah.
dig through permafrost if you're in some parts of the world. There's a lot that
Well,
goes
then think
into
about
it, man.
also, suppose you dig that and it's not quite winter, and then you have to retrieve it during winter, and now you're taking through frozen ground.
Well, and potentially
Does
snow.
anybody
There's no good way to hide your tracks
or
after
ice?
snow.
Yeah.
So
Or
sterilizing the
good lord,
site's not possible.
yeah. Even worse yet, you might be in an area during the winter where it just gets cold and rains. And that happens, very likely you could have all of your indicators, all of your reference points washed away.
Right. Yeah. Well, and like you said, so you're preferably digging at night. So you're going to want to leave a marker for the recovery team, potentially. Or if you're finding your spot at night, placing markers so you'll know where to dig or whatever else. Right. So there's just so many considerations. The hell are you going to do with the shovel when you're done? Like, where are you hiding that?
Well,
I mean, there's so much.
if you're smart, you'll have an e-tool. Just saying.
And you're going to
So
hate
I'm
it the
not
whole time.
lugging a full-size shovel
I
out
hate
there.
the
I'm not
tools.
logging a pickaxe.
Depends on how big the freaking cache is, dude.
Fair, but still, it's like I'm not
Like,
going to want to do that.
well, yeah, I hate digging. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of
Plus,
calories.
in my mind, when I'm talking about caches, I'm talking about going out into the freaking woods, like way out there to cache something. So of course,
Right.
you know, I'm thinking about lugging equipment out there. That's not ideal. It's like, what's your
But
terrain look like?
that's what I'm saying. But that depends on where your cache is, right? That depends on what
Right.
it's for, because it could be medical, it could be radio equipment, it could be clothing, it could be arms and ammunition, it could be just general equipment. You know, what's the stuff? What do you need it for? When do you need it?
Yeah. And I mean, ideally too, especially if you live in an urban environment, kind of like I do, your best bet for caching is going to be a storage facility. That could be your cache as well. You're not just going to have your household items there. I also store, you know, my long range bug out stuff there.
Right.
I gotta, I gotta be able to. I know exactly where it is too. I can open that door and I can find it. I can get to it. But somebody else, it's going to take them a while to find that. If they find, even if they find my cache
Right.
spot,
But then are you always going to have access to that? You know what I
that's
mean?
true.
Like,
Because a lot of these modern storage places, you got to have power because they have
yeah.
automatic gates, they have automatic doors, they have. keypads, they have elevators. Do you have stairs? You can always pry
Yeah.
open the doors. That's not a big problem. It might be a big problem if there's a keypad that unlocks the system,
Hmm.
but there's a lot of things to take into consideration, especially with the placement. Technically, my stuff's buried under a bunch of crap. But
Uh,
with that being said, our last method of emplacement, this is the least ideal, the
but also the
absolute least ideal,
coolest.
but yes, also the coolest. Submersion.
They
It's like
freaking
burying
love.
it, but underwater.
It's like burying it, but
Um,
in water.
there are so
So
many
so
factors.
technically difficult to do this well.
It's
This is a
crazy.
so talk about
You
packaging. So packaging,
Oh my
whatever
god,
you're in, right? It has to be waterproof, obviously,
has to be.
right? So waterproof, it has to be able to handle the external pressures of the water, depending on how what your depth is. Okay, what are you mooring it to? All right, what does the ground look like under it? Is there a current? Is it going to freeze? I- There's so so many freaking things.
Buoyancy.
Are you in
That's the big thing.
saltwater or freshwater? What's your
Yep.
buoyancy? I mean, there's like just math. There's so much math that goes into that. You know what I mean? And like, let's give you the benefit of the doubt. Say you're in the best case scenario, right? You're on your 100 acres of land. You have like 50 ponds that you use for all your cattle, right? And you're just like, yep, that's the stock that's the stock take I'm going to use. And yeah, good for you, but is it worth it? Is that your only option? You have to think, what's the like what's your pros and cons for this when you're doing submersion, because this is such a huge job, not even just in place, but to get it back, right? To recover it is a
Yeah, I
huge
was gonna say
task.
that too. It's a These methods, these site selections, this is all gonna depend on how fast you need to recover your cache. It's not just about how well it's gonna hide it, but how quickly you can retrieve that. Because you can take a cache, get it behind drywall, seal that drywall back up, paint over it. No one will know it's there. Like that's if you're getting someone who's going into a house and tearing up drywall looking for a cache, I gotta wonder what you're doing.
Well, at that point you failed. Like, if
Yeah,
they already know to be looking for caches in the
yeah,
walls,
you
like,
messed up. You
you
messed up.
have a terrible leak and you have a lot of work to do, right?
I actually saw that in a episode of oh my god. I'm trying to think of the name of the show. It was on USA. Dude's name was Michael Weston.
Burn notice.
Burn Notice. Thank you. That was an episode of Burn Notice. They were trying to find a spy, and she had a hard drive hidden in the wall. And of course, if you don't care about cleanup and you need to bug out, just punch a hole straight through that drywall, grab that thing, and go. But
Right.
then you have no way of sterilizing the site. But if you're bugging out, you don't care about that.
Well, we talked about that in our hide and go seek hotel episode.
Correct.
Infinite number of places, depending on what you
Infinite
work
number of
with.
places. Absolutely. But
I was
again,
just gonna say, a little tidbit for submersion. A good place for y'all to start would be Pelican cases.
yep.
Throw that out there.
But you also need to keep in mind buoyancy when it comes to that because those
Yes,
cases will float. Most
they will.
cases
So
will
you
float.
need adequate weighting and tying it down, and the clearness
An-
of the water, and
Anchoring. Yeah.
and it is,
And. Yeah.
yeah, it is definitely the most technically involved way of caching. But
Oh, 100% it is. Absolutely.
that being said, moving
Probably
on
the
to
hardest.
packaging, we
Yeah.
talked to you about a little bit. Obviously, whatever method you're using, whether that be concealment, barrel, or submersion, you are trying to protect your stuff from the elements, right? So anything you use, you're going to want it to be, waterproof.
Waterproof. Yep.
Anything, if you're talking about stuff that is going to be just concealed, you have to think about critters or people.
Hmm.
So you probably don't want like a neon orange box holding all your stuff.
So color matters. Yep.
For submersion and burial, you have to think of the external pressures on your packaging, right? So can it structurally handle being buried? Can it structurally handle being under 4 or 5 feet of water, right?
And being exposed to the elements.
Yeah, moisture is gonna freaking kill whatever
Yes.
you're, and depending on what you're caching, right? So anything metal needs to be protected, needs to be oiled, needs to be not touching other metal, because that's going to rub and that's going to rust. And then when you go to get it in 6 months or a year, you're going to be freaking screwed.
Yep.
So,
That's one thing the Soviets did right when they were storing their AKs for long periods of time.
goodness, for decades,
They
right as
Dude, they
rain.
put them in packaging and just drowned those things in oil.
But dude, right as rain,
You
rip them
Oh,
out of the
yes,
box.
it comes out of the packaging, wipe that thing down, round in the chamber, and it fires. Guaranteed every time. Crazy. I love it.
I would say so. Packaging, that is a big consideration. So whether that's ammunition, whether that's
100%.
firearms or firearm parts, anything that's metal, oil the crap out of it. Don't let it touch with the metal. And
I mean, if you can
what?
get away
Throw
with it,
oxygen packs? Throw the oxygen packs in
oxygen
there.
packs, vacuum seal it, all
Vacuums,
that.
yeah, everything. Because my thing is, if you're at the point to where you're caching stuff, go ahead.
Go.
Go extra. you
Yes,
know,
better safe than sorry.
like
100%.
oil individual pieces, saran wrap individual pieces, throw them in there with padding, and you know, weatherproof the box, and then freaking saran wrap that
Yep.
too. Like,
Yep.
go extra, go cartel
It's
on this crap.
waterproof. Yes.
Like,
Oh my
because
god.
the thing is,
Yes.
if you're, the whole basis of the cache, right, is that you are putting stuff away securely so you can use it later. If you're digging up this cache, you need to be able to use it. So put in the work on the front end and the back end so that when you actually go to dig the stuff up, you can actually use it. It's not a second oh crap moment.
Yep. Because no amount of preparation is going to save you if you go to dig that stuff up to use it and it's destroyed.
Yep.
Then you just wasted time and energy and probably money too. So,
Right. But also, you joked about at the beginning, keep track of your stuff, right? Keep track of your caches, because if you can't find it, it's not useful. But also, have a good stock, whether that's mental if you want to be absolutely secure or encoded. But what stuff is perishable? Do you have food stuff, water stuff? Do you have medical supplies? Things that are perishable need to be rotated.
yep.
That needs to be checked up on, right?
Yep.
So if you have radio or other electronic equipment, throw that crap in a Faraday cage whenever you cache it. Just little things.
Hmm. Temperature. God, we didn't talk about this. Temperature is a big thing too. Because if you cache some, like, I don't know, radio batteries. So under normal circumstances, yes, they will slowly lose their charge, even if they're not being used. But if you cache those things in a cold environment, there's a very good chance they're going to be dead by the time you go to use them.
Yep.
Because cold weather nukes batteries very quickly. People who own Teslas up in cold areas found that out very quick this past winter. You see stories all over the place of dead Teslas or Teslas at the charging ports who can't charge their cars because they're just toast. The batteries are done. They can't handle cold weather. And now a word from our sponsors. This podcast is sponsored by Blackbeard Firestarter. Blackbeard Firestarter has been our first choice in Firestarters since they introduced their Firestarter rope years ago.
Blackbeard offers their fire starters, their fire plugs, arc lighters, ferro rods, stormproof matches, everything you need to get a fire started.
Their products are made right here in the US, wind and waterproof, have an insane burn time. They're basically dummy proof.
And to help you out, Blackbeard let us cherry pick from their store everything that we want, everything that we thought you needed to get a fire started, and we call it our Hard Time Strong Men Fire Kit. On top of that, they're also offering a 15% discount on anything in their store when you enter code STRONGMEN at checkout.
We can't recommend Blackbeard enough. They stand behind their products, and so do we.
Be sure to check them out at blackbeardfire.com and on Instagram at blackbeardfire. And as always, stay in the fight.
Stay in the fight. And now a word from our newest sponsor, Granite Rifle Group. Granite Rifle Group is a precision rifle company owned and operated by a USMC veteran. You've probably heard him on our show.
Granite offers turnkey rifle solutions built around your field use with plug-and-play upgrades available to tailor your rifle for your specific needs. GRG offers simple rifle kits or complete custom builds available to suit every need, from the weekend target shooter or hunter to the long-range precision rifleman.
Granite Rifle Group is all about putting high-quality precision rifles into the hands of Americans to extend the reach of the American rifleman. And when you use the code STRONGMEN at checkout, you'll get 6.9% off your order. Nice.
Nice. Check them out at graniteriflegroup.com or find them on Instagram at granite_rifle_group_LLC. And as always, stay in the fight.
Stay in the fight.
And quickly, I wanted to run through the 12-point cache report. So we'll throw this up in the show notes on the Patreon. But the 12-point cache report consists of 1, the type of cache, 2, the method of caching, 3, its contents, 4, description of containers, 5, general area, 6, immediate area, 7, cache location, 8, emplacement details, 8A, burial, B, concealment, C, submersion, 9, operational data and remarks, 10, dates of emplacement and duration of the cache, 11, sketches and diagrams, and 12, radio message for recovery. So, like I said, that's a lot just to throw at you guys, but we'll throw that in the show notes. But that is the report that you should be thinking of. So if you're not as much in an operational context, you don't have to do that. If you're working with other people, it's good to have that or something like that. Have a system for reporting these things and for just keeping track of your stuff. The organizational part of it is obviously very important.
One practical application that is still making the rounds even today. I've heard about this thing for years now. So thank you from one of our patrons, Sven, for this. But he mentioned geocaching. Geocaching
I'm
is
guilty.
damn near is what?
I said I'm guilty.
Oh, you've done it?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Nah. Okay. I mean, I believe you. I've seen videos of people doing this, but geocaching is the near perfect way to practice emplacement of caches or the recovery of them. Geocaching uses an app. You can get it on your phone, and it'll connect you to basically the world's largest treasure hunt.
Yeah, so
And
I've
it
got
is
on my phone.
crazy.
There's videos on YouTube you can watch. There's on Instagram, whatever your social media taste, but it is just this worldwide game. So you get on your phone, it's free to use, but it obviously takes in your GPS location and it pinpoints around you different geocache locations approximately. So you drive or walk to whatever area that you see geocaches in, and the person who placed the cache gives you directions. And you have to follow those directions. And they can be simple, they can be complex, whatever. I've seen some that have like puzzles and other crap in it. But you follow the directions and you'll find the cache. Inside the cache, you can write your name, say you found it. And then you get credit for it on the app or whatever. People leave notes or trinkets for other people. But I think that it's the perfect practice for this because you can both place caches for people to find, or you can just go around finding stuff, and it is everywhere. So
it's also a great way to practice your land nav.
Yes, exactly. But I just thought it was, kind of kicked myself that I didn't think about it, but like you said, Sven, thanks a lot for shouting that out, man. But it's just the coolest way to practice this skill, right? Because this whatever cache is in your area could be placed from someone that's on the complete other side of the world who came to visit. I mean, you have no idea who these people are, and you're relying on their directions to find the cache, which is normally about the size of a freaking pill bottle. So I don't know. I thought it was really neat, and it gives you a lot of practice in a way that isn't going to raise any eyebrows if you're out doing it in public, because anyone is weird and asks what you're doing. Oh, I'm geocaching, and that's exactly what you're doing. But great practice, gives you both sides of it, and yeah, just want to share that with you guys. Well, did you have anything else for caching?
So yeah, final word from me. Don't be like Hammy the squirrel in Over the Hedge. Don't forget where you buried your nuts. Otherwise, you find it and you can just pull a Hammy and say, "Look, guys, I found my nuts." Sorry, I had to. I love that movie.
But you should always have accountability of your nuts. That's obvious.
Know where your nuts are at all times. You don't want to crush your nuts.
Looking at you, IRA. Guys, we are the Hard Time Strongman podcast, training up a bear class of man. Time
You're
about
gonna get shot
today. It'll be worth it. Stay in the fight.
Stay in the fight. Check out our Discord, where we talk about all the topics that we talk about in our conversations, but in deep dive format. We have a lot of members on there of varying skill sets, of varying proficiencies, all talking about all these topics, sharing their experiences. So join today and help us expand our knowledge base.
And check out our Patreon. Our Patreon, outside of just backing up all of our episodes for when we eventually get canceled, our patrons get access to our exclusive episodes, our pre-shows, our post-shows, our little tidbits here and there that we aren't really supposed to talk about. We're also opening up all of these exclusive episodes for people to individually purchase. So you don't have to get tied into a tier in order to get all that content. You can dip your toes in a little bit, decide you like it, then come and join us on that. We're having exclusive conversations, and along with the Discord, we are just building that community, building that skill set, that mastery, these proficiencies. And this, outside of our sponsor, is what's keeping the lights on and keeping all of this information, all these classes rolling for you guys. So make sure to check out our Patreon. And one last thing, guys, the world is better with you in it. If you're feeling suicidal or if you're in crisis, dial 988 or reach out at 988lifeline.org to get help. Someone's always on the line. So if you need a lifeline, remember 988. Stay in the fight.
Stay in the fight.